Spring morning sunlight filtered through the glass walls of the Hudson Yards Tower, casting long shadows across Olivia Parker's corner office. 50 floors above Manhattan, she stood motionless, phone pressed to her ear, her reflection fractured across the cityscape below. "I understand your concerns, Tanaka-san," she said, voice steady, despite having been awake since 4 a.m. "But Parker Innovations guarantees the integration timeline will not affect production." At 32, Olivia had mastered the art of perfect composure. Her tailored Armani suit revealed no wrinkles despite the early hour. Her chestnut hair fell in a precise bob that framed features the business press often described as intimidatingly focused. Forbes had just named her most successful female entrepreneur under 35. The Wall Street Journal called her the Ice Queen of Tech. She preferred effective. A gentle knock interrupted. Margaret Chen, Olivia's executive assistant of 7 years, appeared in the doorway. At 55, Margaret was the only person who remembered Olivia before the armor, before the title, before the silence that now filled her $5.5 million Westchester home. Margaret held up 5 fingers, mouthing Dr. Winters, the weekly appointment for Lily. Olivia nodded slightly, wrapping up the call. "The board presentation is in my calendar, Thomas. I'll be prepared." Thomas Reynolds, her CFO, stood in the doorway now. At 58, with silver hair and cold calculation in his eyes, he'd been at Parker Innovations since before it became a billion-dollar company. "The Medicorp executives confirmed for tomorrow," he said. "This merger could redefine medical technology for a generation, Olivia. $2.5 billion. Life-changing." "Lives have already changed, Thomas." She gathered her bag. "I have an appointment." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Dr. Winters? Still nothing from Lily?" Olivia's jaw tightened. "She'll speak when she's ready." "It's been 3 years," Thomas said. "Perhaps it's time to consider—" "Consider what?" The edge in her voice was razor sharp. "That my daughter might never speak again? That I've failed her like I failed James?" Thomas retreated a step. "I only meant, I know what you meant." Olivia moved past him, her Louboutins clicking decisively. "Margaret, reschedule the Singapore call. I'll be back by noon." Dr. Helen Winter's office occupied the top floor of a restored brownstone on the Upper East Side. At $500 per hour, the furnishings appropriately suggested both exclusivity and discretion. Muted colors, original artwork, and the quiet promise of solutions money could buy. This was the 18th specialist Olivia had brought Lily to in 3 years. Lily sat perfectly still, a small porcelain doll in a child-sized armchair. At 7, she had her mother's chestnut hair and her father's hazel eyes, eyes that had once sparkled with laughter, but now watched the world with wary detachment. She wore a pale blue dress with small embroidered butterflies, her tiny patent leather shoes not quite touching the floor. Dr. Winters tried again, her voice gentle but professional. "Lily, would you like to draw something for me today? Maybe something that makes you happy?" Silence. Lily's eyes remained fixed on the window, her small hands folded in her lap. Dr. Winters turned to Olivia, lowering her voice. "Mrs. Parker, selective mutism following trauma is challenging. Children create silence as a form of control when their world feels unstable." "I've read the literature, doctor," Olivia said, fatigue evident beneath the polished exterior. "I've consulted specialists from Boston to Switzerland, 18 therapists in 3 years. Dr. Winters nodded sympathetically. "The anniversary of your husband's accident is coming up, correct? Children are sensitive to these patterns." Olivia closed her eyes briefly. The November rain on the windshield. James turning to smile at Lily in the back seat. The truck that didn't stop. The horrifying sound of metal tearing through metal. "Lily stopped speaking at his funeral," she said quietly. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days ago. Dr. Winters made a note. And you've tried the medication Dr. Liu prescribed? Low-dose anxiolytics. They made her drowsy but didn't help her speak. The session ended like all the others, with recommendations for continued therapy, medication adjustments, and the unspoken acknowledgement that modern medicine and money had failed to break through Lily's silence. The Westchester estate sprawled across 3 manicured acres. Colonial architecture, renovated to perfection with modern touches James had insisted on. Large windows, open spaces, room for laughter that no longer filled its halls. Olivia found Lily in her usual spot by the front window. Every morning, her daughter sat there, small face pressed to the glass, watching the street with unusual focus. "Did something catch your attention, sweetheart?" Olivia asked, knowing there would be no verbal response. She followed Lily's gaze to the green waste management truck, making its way down their private drive. An unusual focus for a child, but Dr. Winters had explained that routines provided comfort after trauma. Lily's therapist suggested maintaining predictability, so each Tuesday and Friday, the truck came. Olivia had arranged for the private collection, another expense that meant nothing if it provided her daughter some small comfort. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Olivia poured herself a glass of Cabernet and stood in her daughter's doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. On the nightstand sat a photograph, James holding Lily on his shoulders at Central Park, both laughing in the autumn sunlight. "I don't know what to do anymore," she whispered to the ghost of her husband. "She needs you, the way you always knew exactly what she was thinking, even when she didn't say a word." A tear slipped down her cheek, the first she'd allowed herself in months. "What am I missing, James?" Miles away in Queens, Ethan Mills moved quietly through his modest apartment, preparing lunch for tomorrow. PB&J with the crust cut off, apple slices that wouldn't brown thanks to a little lemon juice, a note with a small hand-drawn rocket ship. At 36, Ethan's life bore no resemblance to his former existence. The cramped 2-bedroom walk-up was worlds away from the Cambridge home he'd once owned. His Harvard diplomas were stored in boxes rather than displayed on walls. His best-selling book on childhood trauma gathered dust in a storage unit he could barely afford. "Dad?" Tyler's voice came from the small bedroom down the hall. "Can you check my science project?" Ethan smiled, setting down the lunch bag. "Coming, astronaut." Tyler sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by cardboard, paint, and a half-constructed model of the solar system. At 8, he had his father's sandy hair and thoughtful expression, but his eyes, those were all Sarah. Brilliant, observant eyes that missed nothing. "Neptune's ring isn't right," Tyler said, frowning at the blue sphere in his hand. "The book says it has 13 faint rings, but I can only fit 5 on my model." Ethan sat beside him, examining the careful work. "Scientific models always simplify reality, Ty. That's why your mom used to say, 'Science is telling stories about truth,'" Tyler finished, a small smile ghosting across his face. "Do you think she would like my project?" Ethan's chest tightened. "She would love it. She'd probably make you add cosmic dust particles using glitter, though." Tyler laughed, a sound that never failed to heal something broken in Ethan's heart. 3 years ago, after Sarah's death, that laugh had disappeared for 14 long months. Selective mutism, Ethan's own specialty as Dr. Ethan Mills, childhood trauma expert, manifesting in his son. The irony hadn't been lost on him. "Bedtime, buddy. Early shift tomorrow." "The fancy neighborhood?" Tyler asked, carefully setting Neptune aside. "Westchester," Ethan nodded, "with the big houses and the little girl who watches from the window." Morning arrived with crystal clarity, the spring air washed clean by overnight rain. Ethan navigated the waste management truck down Maple Avenue, checking the manifest on the seat beside him. He'd been driving this route for just 3 weeks since his transfer from the Bronx division. The pay was the same, but the houses grew progressively larger as he wound through the manicured streets of Old Westchester. The Parker estate appeared ahead, impressive behind its tasteful security gate. Ethan had noticed the small face watching from the second-floor window during his first collection. The little girl never waved, never smiled, just watched with solemn intensity. Something about her stillness resonated with him. He recognized the frozen quality of childhood grief. As he stepped down to collect the bins, the NASA keychain Sarah had given him years ago for the world's most stellar husband slipped from his pocket, landing on the pristine driveway with a small clatter. Movement caught his eye. The little girl had left her window, appeared now at the front door, stepping hesitantly onto the porch. She wore a nightgown with planets printed on it, her small feet bare against the cold stone. Ethan froze, not wanting to frighten her. She approached like a cautious fawn, bending to retrieve his keychain. Her small fingers closed around the metal rocket ship. "Thank you," Ethan said gently when she extended her hand toward him. The girl's lips parted, trembled. A sound emerged, faint as a whisper, rusty from disuse. "Welcome!" The single word hung in the morning air between them. Behind her, a woman appeared in the doorway, perfectly dressed even at this early hour, her expression shifting from concern to absolute shock. The little girl seemed to realize what she'd done. Her eyes widened in surprise at her own voice. She turned and fled back into the house, leaving Ethan holding the keychain, watching the woman's face transform with realization. Olivia couldn't process what she just witnessed. The security footage played again on her tablet. Lily speaking to the sanitation worker. One word. After 3 years of specialized therapists, medications, and treatments costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, her daughter had spoken to a garbage man. "Margaret, who is he?" she demanded over the phone, pacing her home office. "Ethan Mills," Margaret replied an hour later. "Transferred from the Bronx wrote 3 weeks ago. But Olivia, there's more. I ran a deeper check. And he's Dr. Ethan Mills, Harvard psychology professor, specialized in selective mutism and childhood trauma. Published author. His TED Talk on the healing power of silence has over 4 million views." Olivia sat heavily in her chair. Why is a Harvard professor collecting garbage in Westchester? Scandal, apparently. Left academia 9 years ago after allegations involving a student. But there's something else. He has a son, Tyler, 8 years old. Olivia's mind raced. "Send me everything you can find. Academic papers, videos, everything." Thomas called as she was reviewing Ethan's publication history. "The Medicorp representatives want to move the meeting up. Richard Coleman himself is flying in." "Fine," she said distractedly. "Margaret will adjust the schedule." "Olivia," Thomas's voice sharpened, "this merger requires your complete focus. $2.5 billion in the future of Parker Innovations isn't something to handle while distracted." She bristled. "I've never been distracted from this company's interest, Thomas." "Good," he replied, "because Richard Coleman is extremely traditional. Old money, conservative values. He's looking for stability and perfect optics. Nothing that might suggest unconventional judgment." The warning was clear. Olivia ended the call and stared at the image frozen on her screen. A younger Ethan Mills in a Harvard lecture hall, sleeves rolled up explaining the neuroscience of trauma with passionate gestures. The following morning, Olivia waited at the end of her driveway, a Burberry trench coat belted over her dress. Louboutins incongruous against the wet asphalt. When the green truck rounded the corner, she stepped forward, hand raised. Ethan braked smoothly, surprise registering on his face as he recognized her. He cut the engine and climbed down, moving with cautious dignity. "Mrs. Parker," he said, his voice educated, gentle, nothing like what she'd expected. Dr. Mills, she replied, watching his eyes widen slightly at the recognition. We need to talk about my daughter. Lily, he said, nodding. The little astronaut by the window. She spoke to you. Olivia's voice nearly broke. One word, the first in 3 years since her father died. Ethan's expression softened. I suspected it might be selective mutism, the stillness, the watchfulness. I've tried everything, Olivia said, professional composure cracking. 18 specialists, the best trauma therapists on the East Coast, medications, play therapy, art therapy. Nothing worked. Then she gestured helplessly at the garbage truck. Ethan smiled sadly. I didn't do anything special, Mrs. Parker. I just noticed her. Children with selective mutism aren't choosing not to speak. They physically can't when they feel unsafe or observed. They need to be seen without feeling examined. I need your help, Olivia said, the words difficult for someone accustomed to giving orders rather than asking favors. Whatever your fee, I don't practice anymore, Ethan interrupted gently, and I don't need your money. Everyone needs money. What I need is time with my son, Ethan corrected. The flexibility this job gives me matters more than status or salary. Olivia studied him, recalibrating. Then what would convince you to help Lily? Ethan considered for a moment. I'm not a therapist anymore, Mrs. Parker, but I am a father who helped his son through the same condition. If I can help Lily, it won't be as Dr. Mills with a treatment plan. It will be as someone who understands that healing doesn't follow clinical timelines. Whatever it takes, Olivia whispered, vulnerability showing through her carefully constructed exterior. Please. The first meeting happened on a Saturday morning. Ethan arrived in a faded Toyota Corolla with Tyler beside him, carrying a plate of homemade cookies. The contrast between his worn jeans and Olivia's casual but still designer weekend wear couldn't have been more striking. Olivia had expected a structured session, perhaps with specialized techniques or exercises. Instead, Ethan suggested they all go into the garden. No clipboards, no observations, he explained quietly to Olivia. Just people being together without expectations. Lily watched from the terrace steps, her expression cautious but curious, as Tyler unpacked a small backpack containing model rockets, a magnifying glass, and a mysterious wooden box. My dad says you like watching things, Tyler said matter-of-factly to Lily, setting out his treasures on the grass. I like watching things too, especially bugs and planets. Lily didn't respond, but she inched closer. Olivia started to intervene, to facilitate, to fix, but Ethan placed a gentle hand on her arm. Let them find their way, he murmured. Your instinct is to make this work, to solve it. But connection can't be manufactured or scheduled. I can't just do nothing, Olivia objected. Doing nothing is sometimes everything, Ethan replied. Observe without intervening. Listen without formulating responses. It's the hardest skill for high achievers to master. They watched as Tyler opened the wooden box, revealing a small mechanical music player in the shape of a NASA rocket. He wound the silver key, and delicate notes filled the spring air. Lily's eyes widened with wonder. It was my mom's, Tyler explained, a trace of sadness in his voice. She went to the stars 3 years ago. Something passed between the children then, a recognition of shared loss. Lily reached out, her small finger gently touching the rocket's silver tip. Do you hear that? Ethan asked softly, his voice for Olivia alone. Silence has different qualities. This isn't the silence of fear. This is the silence of connection. Olivia felt tears threaten. She hasn't let anyone knew this close since James died. Children recognize fellow travelers, Ethan said. Tyler didn't speak for 14 months after his mother died. Cancer, brain tumor. She was a neurologist for NASA, studied brain adaptation in space. Ironic, isn't it? The pieces clicked into place. That's why you left Harvard. Ethan nodded, eyes on the children. Sarah got sick. We needed flexibility for treatments. The university spoke about family values, but denied my leave request. Then the experimental treatment wasn't covered by insurance. We went bankrupt trying to save her. $780,000 in medical debt. He took a breath. After she died, a student invented a story about inappropriate contact when I rejected her thesis. The university chose the easier path, suggesting I resign rather than investigating. With Tyler traumatized and selective mutism setting in, I chose my son over clearing my name. That's why you won't take my money, Olivia realized. Money didn't save Sarah. Status didn't protect Tyler's childhood. Ethan's gaze was steady. What healed him was time, patience, and creating safety in a world that suddenly made no sense. Across the garden, Tyler demonstrated how to make a dandelion whistle. Lily watched, entranced, shoulders relaxed for the first time in memory. Lily doesn't need fixing, Mrs. Parker, Ethan continued. She needs to feel safe enough that words become possible again. The weeks that followed brought subtle but significant changes. Ethan and Tyler visited twice weekly. No formal therapy, no treatment plans, just presence. They planted sunflowers in the garden, built model rockets, lay on the grass identifying cloud shapes. Olivia found herself participating, awkwardly at first, then with growing comfort. She canceled a Tokyo trip, delegated the Singapore expansion, started coming home for dinner instead of after Lily was asleep. Margaret noticed the change. You seem different, she observed after Olivia rescheduled a board presentation to attend Lily's science fair. Something previously unthinkable. Do I? Olivia asked, reviewing quarterly projections. Lighter, Margaret decided. Less armored. Olivia glanced up, surprised by the observation. Lily hummed yesterday, actually hummed along with Tyler's music box. Dr. Winters never achieved that in a year of therapy. Margaret smiled. Perhaps it's not about achievement. The thought lingered as Olivia worked through financial models for the Medicorp merger. $2.5 billion. Market expansion. 5,000 jobs secured. The deal Thomas reminded her daily would cement her legacy. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Lily helped Tyler with his homework today, used hand signals to show multiplication. Progress isn't always verbal. Warmth spread through her chest at the simple message. Their communication had evolved into a comfortable exchange of observations and small victories. Nothing personal, nothing inappropriate, and yet Thomas had begun watching her with narrowed eyes whenever Ethan's name appeared in conversation. The breakthrough came unexpectedly on a warm afternoon. Tyler had brought his telescope to show Lily the proper setup for viewing stars. As the children worked together on the back lawn, Olivia and Ethan sat on the terrace steps, conversation flowing with surprising ease. Why did you become a psychologist? Olivia asked. Ethan smiled. My brother had selective mutism as a child. Back then they called it stubborn silence and tried to force children to speak. I wanted better approaches. And now you collect garbage. I serve communities by removing waste, he corrected without defensiveness. It's honest work that lets me be there for Tyler's science fairs and nightmares. Harvard didn't offer that flexibility. Olivia considered this perspective shift. I built Parker Innovations so Lily would never worry about security the way I did growing up. Now we have every material comfort, but she's trapped in silence. Different prisons, Ethan observed. You created financial security at the cost of time. I chose time at the cost of status. A sudden cry interrupted their conversation. Tyler had tripped over a sprinkler head, falling hard onto the grass. Lily's face crumpled with concern. She rushed to him, kneeling beside his scraped knee. What happened next stopped time itself. Are you okay? Lily's voice emerged. Clear, concerned, undeniable. 3 perfect words. Tyler looked up in surprise, then smiled through his tears. Yeah, just hurts a little. Lily turned toward the terrace, seeking her mother's gaze. Olivia stood frozen, one hand covering her mouth, tears streaming unchecked down her face. Ethan touched her elbow gently. Breathe, he whispered. Olivia moved as if in a dream, crossing the lawn and kneeling in the grass. Louboutins and Prada be damned. She opened her arms and Lily came to her, uncertain but trusting. Mommy, Lily whispered against her neck. Tyler got hurt. Olivia held her daughter close. 723 days of silence, broken by simple concern for another child. I know, baby. I see. Over Lily's head, she met Ethan's gaze. In his eyes, she found neither triumph nor professional satisfaction, only genuine joy and a depth of understanding that made her heart constrict. Thomas Reynolds stood in Olivia's office the following morning, expression grave. The board has concerns about your recent associations. Meaning what exactly? Olivia's voice held dangerous calm. Thomas placed a folder on her desk. Inside were photographs, Ethan's car and her driveway. Ethan and Olivia sitting on the garden steps. Innocent moments captured with sinister implication. Richard Coleman called me personally, Thomas continued. A board member saw you with the sanitation worker in Westchester Park. They researched him. Harvard dismissal, allegations of impropriety, medical bankruptcy. This isn't the image Medicorp wants associated with their $2.5 billion investment. Anger flashed hot and bright. His name is Ethan Mills. He helped my daughter speak after 3 years of silence. That's touching, Thomas replied coldly. But this company supports 5,000 families. Your personal life cannot jeopardize their livelihoods. My personal life? End your association with Mills. Issue a statement thanking him for his assistance, but confirming Lily is now receiving proper professional care. Do this before the Medicorp signing ceremony on Friday. Olivia's voice turned to ice. Or, the board votes on your leadership next week. As things stand, I've counted 6 votes for a change in management. Thomas adjusted his cufflinks. Your call, Olivia. 1 former academic or 5,000 jobs. Rain pounded against Ethan's apartment windows as he graded Tyler's math homework at their small kitchen table. The buzzer sounded, surprising him at the late hour. Olivia Parker stood in the hallway, rainwater dripping from her hair, makeup smudged beneath her eyes. Gone was the polished CEO. This was a woman at a breaking point. Mrs. Parker? Olivia, she corrected, voice rough. He ushered her inside, acutely aware of the apartment's modest proportions compared to what she was accustomed to. Tyler was already asleep. The small living space crowded with books and model rockets rather than expensive furnishings. The board discovered our arrangement, Olivia said without preamble, pacing the small living room. They're threatening the Medicorp merger unless I cut ties with you. Understanding dawned. I see. $2.5 billion, she continued. 5,000 jobs, market expansion, everything I've worked for. Against a garbage man with a scandalous past, Ethan finished evenly. That's not fair. It's reality, he said gently. I've stood where you are, Olivia. Harvard or Tyler, career or family. The world isn't built for both. She stopped pacing, looking at him directly. What did it cost you? Really? Everything external. Reputation, colleagues, financial security. His smile held no regret. But I gained the only thing that matters, being present for my son when presence was the only medicine that worked. Olivia absorbed this, noticing for the first time the photographs crowding the refrigerator. Tyler on Ethan's shoulders. Tyler with a science fair ribbon. Simple moments captured like treasures. When Tyler wouldn't speak, she asked softly, how did you know what to do? I didn't, Ethan admitted. I just stopped trying to fix him and started meeting him where he was. Silence became our shared language until words felt safe again. Olivia's professional armor cracked completely. I don't know how to choose. Ethan approached her carefully. Let me ask you something. When you're 80 years old, looking back on your life, which will matter more? The merger that added billions to Parker Innovations' value, or the sound of Lily saying "Mommy" after years of silence? A single tear escaped, tracing down her cheek. Why does it have to be either or? Why can't I have both? Because power structures protect themselves, Ethan said simply. They demand conformity to succeed within them. I chose Tyler over Harvard. You're being asked to choose Parker Innovations over Lily's healing path. It's not that simple. A tremendous crash of thunder shook the apartment, cutting off her words. Ethan's phone rang immediately after. He answered, his expression transforming from confusion to alarm. When? He demanded. Is anyone? He fell silent, listening. I'm coming now. He hung up, face pale. There's a fire at your estate. Lightning struck the greenhouse. Lily's room is in the east wing where the fire is spreading. The housekeeper can't reach her. The drive back to Westchester happened in a blur of rain and fear. By the time they arrived, emergency vehicles lined the street. Flames illuminated the night sky, consuming the east wing where Lily's bedroom was located. My daughter's inside, Olivia screamed, fighting against the firefighter who tried to restrain her. Lily! Second floor, east wing, blue bedroom, Ethan confirmed, scanning the structure with trained eyes. He spotted the balcony off the hallway bathroom, still intact but threatened by advancing flames. The decision formed instantly. While the firefighters focused on containing the main blaze, Ethan circled behind, locating the garden trellis that reached near the balcony's edge. Sir, you can't, a firefighter shouted. But Ethan was already climbing, the wooden structure groaning beneath his weight. Images of Tyler alone, of Sarah's last moments, of promises made, all fueled his ascent. He hauled himself over the railing and smashed through the bathroom window with his elbow. Inside, smoke filled the hallway. He dropped to his hands and knees where the air remained marginally clearer, crawling toward Lily's room. Lily! His voice emerged harsh through the smoke. Lily, it's Ethan! A door handle locked. He stood, braced himself, and kicked twice. The frame splintered. Lily huddled in the corner, hands pressed over her ears, eyes squeezed shut against the nightmare unfolding around her. Ethan crossed the room in 3 steps and scooped her up. I've got you, stargazer, he whispered against her hair. Hold tight. He wrapped his soaking wet shirt around her face and retraced his path through the smoke-filled hallway. The main stairs were engulfed now. Only the bathroom and balcony offered escape. Below, firefighters had positioned a jump cushion. Drop her down, they called. Ethan looked into Lily's terrified eyes. Do you trust me? She nodded against his shoulder. Close your eyes and hold on. Don't let go. He climbed onto the railing, holding Lily with both arms now. For a moment, they balanced between fire and empty space. Then he jumped, twisting midair to ensure his body would hit first, shielding her from impact. They struck the cushion, bounced once, and were immediately pulled to safety by waiting firefighters. Olivia materialized through the chaos, her face streaked with ash and tears. She reached for Lily, who transferred from Ethan's arms to her mother's. Mother and daughter collapsed together on the wet grass, both sobbing. Ethan stepped back, suddenly lightheaded from smoke inhalation. Paramedics approached with oxygen, but he waved them toward Lily first. The little girl pulled away from her mother just enough to speak. Her voice, small but clear, carried through the chaos of sirens and shouting. I trust him, Mommy. Olivia's eyes found Ethan's across the emergency-lit lawn. Something passed between them, understanding, gratitude, and something deeper neither was ready to name. 1 year later, spring returned to New York, cherry blossoms drifting across the newly constructed Lily Parker Center for Childhood Trauma. The modern building stood on the edge of Central Park, its glass walls designed to bring nature inside rather than shut it out. Inside the main atrium, Olivia adjusted the podium microphone, surveying the gathered crowd. Medical professionals, board members, press. Thomas Reynolds sat in the front row, his initial opposition to the center transformed by witnessing Lily's recovery and the public relations windfall it generated for Parker Innovations. The Medicorp merger had proceeded after all, not on Richard Coleman's terms, but on Olivia's. The public narrative of Parker Innovations' commitment to childhood trauma healing proved more valuable than traditional corporate optics. 3 years ago, Olivia began, my daughter stopped speaking after witnessing her father's death. For 3 years, I tried to fix her with conventional approaches, the best specialists, the most expensive treatments. What I didn't understand was that healing doesn't follow corporate timelines or respond to management techniques. She paused, finding Ethan's eyes in the audience. He sat beside Tyler, both in suits rather than work clothes or school uniforms. Beside them was Lily, now 8, whispering something in Tyler's ear that made him smile. The Lily Parker Center represents a new approach, Olivia continued, combining traditional therapy with what I've come to call presence practice, the revolutionary idea that sometimes children don't need to be fixed. They need to be heard, even in their silence. She gestured to the side where Margaret Chen stood waiting. Our executive director, Margaret Chen, brings personal commitment to this mission. Her daughter Katie died by suicide at 17 after unrecognized trauma. Margaret will ensure no child falls through the cracks for lack of resources. The audience applauded as Margaret stepped forward. Thomas Reynolds, surprisingly, clapped loudest of all. And our director of research, Dr. Ethan Mills, former Harvard professor, and the man who taught me that success isn't measured in market capitalization, but in moments of connection. Ethan joined her at the podium, uncomfortable with attention but committed to the cause. The James Sarah Fund, named for 2 parents who left us too soon, will provide financial support for families facing catastrophic medical costs while caring for children with trauma-related conditions. Lily and Tyler came forward then, carrying a small model rocket between them. Lily's voice, clear and confident, filled the atrium. This is for my dad and Tyler's mom, she announced. They're watching from the stars. Together, the children pressed a button, launching the small rocket. It soared upward, trailing a paper banner that unfurled to reveal the center's motto, "Every silence holds a voice." Later, as guests mingled and toured the facility, Ethan found Olivia standing alone on the rooftop garden, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in gold. Having regrets about giving up the corner office? He asked. She smiled, the expression reaching her eyes now. I haven't given up anything that matters. Parker Innovations thrives with my reduced schedule. The merger succeeded, and I heard Lily laugh this morning, really laugh. The board's perspective certainly changed after the fire. Nothing like a near tragedy and positive press coverage to adjust corporate values, she agreed dryly. From below came the sounds of children's voices, Tyler showing Lily and 2 new center patients how the telescope worked. Simple moments that would have been impossible a year ago. Ethan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Inside was a keychain, identical to the one he dropped that fateful morning, but with an addition. A small diamond star hung beside the rocket ship. What's this? Olivia asked, taking it carefully. A reminder, Ethan said softly, that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning. Sarah and James would want their children happy, even if the path forward looks different than we imagined. Olivia's fingers closed around the keychain, her other hand finding Ethan's. I was so focused on fixing everything that I couldn't see what was already whole. Below them, Lily's voice floated upward as she helped another silent child position the telescope toward the evening star. See, some things are too bright to miss, even when they seem far away. Ethan squeezed Olivia's hand gently. Perhaps we can't have everything, but we can have what matters most. As twilight deepened over Manhattan, four figures gathered around a telescope on the rooftop garden, a family not formed by convention, but by understanding the language of silence and the courage to begin again. Look, Tyler pointed skyward, his arm around Lily's shoulder. Our parents are watching from those stars. Olivia and Ethan exchanged glances, a world of understanding passing between them. Sometimes the most important sounds aren't words at all. Sometimes they're the crack of ice breaking, the rush of walls falling, the quiet breath of someone learning to trust again.